June 7, 1944, just after dawn, in a quiet headquarters near Paris, General Leo Geyr von Schweppenburg meticulously examined the map spread across his operations table. The pins marking his panzer divisions formed a pattern of his own design, a direct counter to Erwin Rommel's dire warnings about Allied air superiority. Rommel had been adamant. Daylight movement was suicide. Geyr, however, disagreed. The sky, he believed, would soon reveal who was right. Panzer Lehr was on the move from Chartres, the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, advancing from Lisieux under SS Brigadeführer Fritz Witt, with Kurt Meyer leading the spearhead regiment. The 21st Panzer Division was already locked in combat near Caine. Other armoured units were converging from across France, all under Gerd von Rundstedt's overarching command. On paper, it presented the formidable image of a hammer about to strike. The Allies had landed in Normandy just 24 hours earlier during Operation Overlord. Their beachheads were still shallow, still vulnerable, and crucially, still within reach of a concentrated armoured blow. If Geyr's panzers could reach the coast by nightfall on June 8th, he believed they might still hurl the invasion back into the English Channel. General Leo Geyr von Schweppenburg commanded Panzer Group West, Germany's strategic armoured reserve in France. 4 decades in uniform had instilled in him one cardinal lesson: strike fast, strike hard, before the enemy has a chance to consolidate. He had meticulously studied the invasion problem. The first 48 to 72 hours, he knew, would be critical. Within that narrow window, a concentrated panzer attack might just split the Allied beaches, much as German armour had done at Dunkirk in 1940. On the morning of June 7th, Geyr had every reason for confidence. Panzer Lehr and the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, were already making their way toward Normandy. The hammer was indeed rising. What Geyr did not yet grasp, however, was that the roads themselves had become a battlefield, and on that battlefield, his panzers had already lost. The initial reports began trickling in shortly after 0900 hours. At first, they seemed routine, scattered mentions of air attacks along the approach routes. A fuel convoy hit near Alençon, a column delayed by cratered roads south of Falaise, damage attributed to the transportation plan, the systematic Allied bombing campaign that had shattered French railway networks in the weeks leading up to D-Day. These were the expected frictions of war, the minor setbacks every military operation encountered. No campaign ever ran perfectly according to plan. Geyr's staff logged the reports and updated the situation map. The overall picture still appeared favourable. Panzer Lehr was making steady progress toward its assembly area. The 12th SS was advancing toward Caen. Other units were in motion across the French road network. But as the morning wore on, the pattern in the reports began to shift dramatically. General Fritz Berlein, commanding Panzer Lehr Division, reported that his fuel trucks had been destroyed by fighter bombers near Argentan. Without fuel, his tanks had been forced to halt in an orchard, waiting for resupply that might never come. A 12th SS communications officer reported that his signals vehicles had been caught on an open road and incinerated by RAF Typhoons. 3 staff cars destroyed, 6 men killed, the regimental command net temporarily silenced. By noon, the individual incidents had escalated into an overwhelming flood. Geyr stood before the map table as his intelligence officers read out the latest messages, each one a fresh blow. Column attacked near Tury-Harcourt, 14 vehicles destroyed by P-47 Thunderbolts. Ammunition convoy hit outside Vire, explosions continuing for 20 minutes as shells cooked off in burning trucks. Tank transporters caught on the Falaise road. 5 Panther tanks lost before they could even reach the battlefield. What Geyr, from his headquarters near Paris, could not see was the sophisticated war machine the Allies had built above the roads of France. By June 1944, the Western Allies controlled an air force of staggering size and technological prowess. The American 8th and 9th Air Forces, combined with the British Royal Air Force, could deploy thousands of aircraft into the skies over France on any given day. Their weapon of choice was the fighter bomber. The American P-47 Thunderbolt was a beast of an aircraft, 7 tons of engine, armor and firepower, capable of carrying 2,000 pounds of bombs or 8 rockets, while still possessing the performance to engage other aircraft. The British Hawker Typhoon was equally formidable. Armed with RP-3 rockets, each capable of penetrating the armor of most German vehicles, the Typhoon had been specifically optimized for attacking armored columns and strong points. But the aircraft were only one component of this intricate system. The transportation plan had systematically destroyed French railways, bridges, and critical road junctions. In May 1944 alone, Allied bombers had dropped tens of thousands of tons of explosives on rail yards stretching from Paris to the English Channel. The objective was simple. When the invasion came, German divisions would find their railways broken and their roads funneled into predictable routes that Allied aircraft could patrol with deadly efficiency. Then, for the invasion itself, the Allies deployed something Geyr had never before encountered: real-time tactical control that seamlessly linked aircraft to ground forces through sophisticated close air support networks. Mobile radar stations could track aircraft across the battle area. Ground control centers maintained constant radio contact with fighter-bomber squadrons, directing them precisely toward targets. The entire system was bound together by robust radio networks and standardized procedures. The result was a network that functioned almost like a living organism. A German column would begin moving on a French road. Within minutes, a reconnaissance aircraft would report its exact location. Controllers would then vector the nearest fighter bombers directly toward the target. P-47 Thunderbolts, or RAF Typhoons, would dive out of the sky, unleash their devastating RP-3 rockets, and climb away before the Germans could organize any effective anti-aircraft fire. On June 7, 1944, the P-47s of the American 9th Air Force flew over 2,000 fighter-bomber sorties in support of the Normandy landings. The RAF Typhoons added hundreds more. Every major road within 100 kilometers of the beaches was under continuous patrol from first light until darkness fell. Geyr's panzer divisions were not advancing into battle. They were advancing into a meticulously laid trap. By 1500 hours on June 7th, the reports reaching Panzer Group West headquarters had become impossible to dismiss. Panzer Lehr Division, the elite formation that Geyr was counting on to spearhead the counterattack, was bleeding out on the roads south of Caine. General Fritz Bauerlein reported that his columns were under continuous air attack. Fuel trucks were burning, ammunition vehicles were exploding, half-tracks carrying panzer grenadiers were scattered across the French countryside. Bauerlein himself had narrowly escaped death that very morning. His command car had been strafed by P-47 Thunderbolts while crossing an open stretch of road near Argentan. He had survived only by throwing himself into a ditch while machine gun bullets stitched patterns in the earth around him. When he emerged, his car was a burning wreck, and 2 of his staff officers were dead. The tanks themselves often survived individual attacks. A Panzer IV or a Panther tank could absorb machine gun fire, and bombs had to strike very close to destroy such heavily armored vehicles. But the tanks could not fight without fuel. They could not fight without ammunition. They could not fight without the infantry and artillery that made them part of a cohesive combined arms formation. Bauerlein's war diary, recovered after the war, recorded the devastating scale of destruction. In a single day's march, Panzer Lehr lost over 80 vehicles to air attack. Most were soft-skinned transports and fuel trucks, but the losses tragically included 5 tanks destroyed before they ever saw an enemy ground unit. His division was being systematically dismembered on the march. The 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, fared no better. Kurt Mayer's spearhead regiment, pushing toward Caine from the east, was caught on open roads in the harsh afternoon sunlight. RAF Typhoons, armed with RP-3 rockets, descended on the young soldiers with methodical, terrifying precision. Veterans who had survived years on the brutal Eastern Front found themselves utterly helpless against an enemy they could not even shoot back at. At Panzer Group West headquarters, Geyr's staff frantically tried to maintain some semblance of order. They rerouted columns onto secondary roads. They ordered movement restricted to the brief windows of dawn and dusk. They desperately requested Luftwaffe fighter cover to protect the approaching panzers. All such requests went unanswered. The Luftwaffe, decimated by months of attrition over the Reich, could not possibly contest Allied air superiority over France. By evening, Geyr faced a situation his decades of training had not prepared him to address. His divisions were still nominally moving toward Normandy, but the grim reality had devolved into a nightmare of burning vehicles, scattered units, and broken communications. The counterattack he had planned was not going to happen on June 8th. Perhaps not on June 9th. Perhaps never. The moment of stark clarity came sometime after 2,100 hours. Geyr stood alone before the operations map, understanding now with chilling certainty that the war he had trained for, the war of tanks against tanks, of swift concentration and decisive maneuver, was over. A new, terrifying kind of warfare had replaced it, a war of complex systems and interconnected networks and crucial information, where the side that controlled the sky truly controlled everything beneath it. On June 10th, 3 days after the invasion, ultra-intelligence from Bletchley Park pinpointed Geyr's headquarters near the quiet village of Caine, southwest of Caen. Radio intercepts and detailed reconnaissance had identified the telltale concentration of vehicles and communications equipment. Shortly before 1900 hours, 17 RAF Typhoons screamed down, firing 136 RP-3 rockets from 2,000 feet. Minutes later, 61 Mitchell bombers unleashed over 500 500-pound bombs from 12,000 feet. The compound was utterly saturated. General Major von Douwens, the Chief of Staff, and 17 other officers were killed. Most had been at dinner in the chateau when the siren sounded. They had walked outside to watch the Typhoons through binoculars, tragically unaware that they were the target. Maps and crucial plans were scattered or incinerated. Geyr himself was severely wounded by shrapnel, fragments tearing into his body as he desperately tried to reach shelter. The devastating attack on Caine effectively destroyed Panzer Group West as a functioning headquarters. Command and control of German armoured operations in Normandy immediately devolved to improvised and often chaotic arrangements. Geyr was evacuated to a hospital and eventually relieved of command. The Battle of Normandy continued for 2 more brutal months. The panzer divisions that had been savaged on the roads of June 7th continued to resist with unwavering determination. Panzer Geyr fought fierce tank battles around Villers-Bocage. The 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, contested every single hedge near Caen. The Wehrmacht made the liberation of France a bloody, grinding struggle. But none of it changed the fundamental equation established in those crucial first 24 hours. The window for reversing Operation Overlord had slammed shut within the first day, not because of what happened on Omaha Beach, but because of what happened on the roads leading to it. When we ask what truly decided the fate of D-Day, the answer may well lie in the burning convoys scattered across the French countryside. The Allied soldiers who bravely stormed the beaches undeniably earned their revered place in history. But so too did the pilots flying P-47 Thunderbolts and Hawker Typhoons, the meticulous controllers directing close air support, the vigilant radar operators, and the brilliant codebreakers at Bletchley Park, who together built a system that utterly destroyed Germany's armoured reserve before it could even begin to fight. Rommel, it turned out, had been absolutely right about Allied air power. The sky belonged to the Allies, and with it, everything beneath.